the Inquisitor's trap of false witness. The floor of the Hall of Judgment is colder than the pyre. Fear not, I will stand beside you. Valen's brand will not touch you. The wind of the early spring, though finally free of winter's icy shards, carried a clinging dampness that made the begonia branches of the Duke's keep sway gently. I was in the garden turning the soil, preparing to plant the mint seeds Cain gave me, my fingertips stained with fresh earth and warmed by the sun. This was the most tranquil morning I'd had since arriving at the keep. The soldiers' murmurs had faded, Samuel's old wound was healing, and the bread from the steward even came with an extra slice of butter. The herbal manual in my pocket nudged me. I'd tossed it in after tidying it this morning. Something hard was pressed between the pages, but I hadn't looked closely, assuming it was just a dried petal my mother had left behind. This tranquility was shattered quickly by hurried footsteps. I looked up to see Martha stumbling into the garden. Her rough linen skirt was splattered with mud, her hair a tangle of wind-blown straw. She was clutching a crumpled paper packet to her chest, her other hand fiercely gripping a copper coin, its edges polished bright, etched with the distinctive cross of the church. Clearly one of Valen's tokens. She fell to her knees before me, tears streaming down her face, hitting the soil. Her hand, clutching the coin, was pale and strained. "Miss Alara, I have wronged you." Her voice was terribly hoarse. She grabbed my trouser leg, and the copper coin slipped from her fingers to land at my feet. "Valen took my son. He said if I didn't sign this paper, he would throw my boy into the ancient woods to feed the beasts. This copper coin is what he gave me, saying hold this to prove you obey, but I know, it is his mark to watch me." My heart sank. I knelt to steady her, picking up the coin. The cold metal seemed to retain the heat of Valen's palm. The reverse side was etched with a small V, his personal seal. My fingers traced the etching, then moved to the paper packet she held stiff, like folded documents. "What paper?" My voice shook with an ominous premonition. Martha tremblingly opened the packet. A yellowed parchment emerged, scribbled with a charcoal symbol, its lines crooked and edges smudged with ink. Next to it was a scrawled declaration: Alara used this wicked sigil to curse the villagers, causing my daughter's death. I now attest to this truth. At the bottom right of the page, a blurred fingerprint was pressed, Martha's, uneven, clearly forced. It was a forgery. The symbol was not a rune I knew. My mother's runes were fluid and glowed faint green with herbal juice, but these lines were stiff and straight, with several deliberately added hooks, looking exactly like the marks Valen made with his searing brand. I clenched the parchment, my thumb brushing the rough paper, feeling Martha's tears wet the ink. "What else did he make you do?" "He wants me to point you out before the king. He said you drew this symbol when you gave my daughter the herbs." Martha's weeping intensified. Her other hand subconsciously reached for a cloth bundle at her waist. I glimpsed a dried flower fragment inside an edelweiss, unique to the Northlands. "My mother often carried them." "I know you are good. My daughter died of the plague, it had nothing to do with you. But my son is only 5, and he was calling for your mint drops yesterday. I cannot lose him." I patted her back, my heart aching. Edelweiss was a Northlands flower. Valen's camp was south of the city. This flower could not have come from him. Perhaps Martha's son had secretly slipped it to her, or an old acquaintance had passed it on. I dared not ask. I folded the parchment and tucked it into my herb satchel, my fingers brushing the hard object in my pocket. It was still there, but there was no time to look. "Get up. We will go to Samuel. He will know what to do." As we reached the front hall, we saw Samuel in his black Duke's formal attire, adjusting his cravat before a mirror. A silver badge was pinned to his left chest, the King's Defender of the Realm medal. The edge of the badge held a faint scratch. I remembered him saying it was from Valen's brand during a skirmish 20 years ago. Seeing us, his brow immediately furrowed. His gaze paused on Martha's tear-swollen eyes and the copper coin in my hand, and he instantly understood. What has happened? I handed him the forgery and the coin. Martha stammered out Valen's threats. When she mentioned the Edelweiss, Samuel's eyes flickered, but he didn't press. Samuel looked at the symbol on the parchment, his knuckles turning white, the scratch on his badge prominent in the light. He has a flair for fiction. The lines of the rune are even wrong, yet he dares call it a dark sigil. He turned to the steward. Prepare the carriage. I am going to see the king. Bring the wooden box from the third shelf of my study. It contains documents from 20 years ago. On the way to the king's palace, Samuel held my hand. His palm was warm, yet held a faint, imperceptible tremor. An elderly woman in a gray tunic, carrying an herb basket, flashed past the carriage window. A small copper bell hung from her basket identical to the one my mother used to carry. I started to point her out, but the old woman quickly disappeared into the alley, leaving only a faint scent of mint. Do not worry, Samuel whispered, not noticing my glance. The king is not a fool. Valen's trickery will not deceive him. But I knew the church's pressure was immense. Cain had said Valen had united 3 bishops to accuse Samuel of sheltering a witch and plotting treason. Even if the king did not believe it, he had to offer the church a concession. The king's palace was more imposing than the duke's keep. The white marble steps were straight and long, flanked by guards in golden armor, their shoulder plates bearing the inscription Templar Guard. Their eyes were cold as ice. As we entered the main hall, the king sat on his high throne, idly turning a jade thumb ring on his finger. The ring had a faint crack, which he rubbed constantly, as if hiding something. Valen stood below the throne in his deep crimson vestments. Seeing us, a subtle smirk crossed his lips, and he subtly pressed his left hand to his waist where a small clay pot was hidden. I recognized it was identical to the one he had used to pour the black liquid at the stake. Samuel, you arrived precisely on time. The king's voice was grave. His gaze fell on me, scrutinizing, but then darted away as it brushed the copper coin in Samuel's hand. Valen claims the witch you shelter cursed the villagers with a dark sigil, and we have a witness here. What say you? Samuel presented the forgery, the coin, and the wooden box. His voice was firm. Your Majesty, this is evidence fabricated by Valen, who coerced a villager. The symbol is not a rune. Alara knows this copper coin is Valen's personal property, bearing his private seal on the reverse. The box contains the roster of wounded soldiers from the Northlands 20 years ago, documenting my own treatment by Alara's mother. Her herbs only cure, they do not curse. He turned to Martha. Martha, tell His Majesty. Did Valen force you to sign this paper? Did he give you that coin? As Martha started to speak, Valen suddenly stepped forward, his eyes fixed on her like a snake, pressing the clay pot at his waist again. Martha, have you forgotten your son is still in my hands? He was calling for the palace's honey water just yesterday. Martha froze, her lips moving silently. Her gaze fell on the crack in the king's jade thumb ring. She suddenly bowed her head, her shoulders trembling. The crack in the ring was identical to a flaw on her son's wooden toy sword. Did the king and Valen have another bargain? The king sighed, rising from the throne. The crack in the jade ring was prominent in the light. Samuel, I know you protect her, but the church's pressure is too great. 3 bishops await outside for my decision. He paused, his gaze lingering on me before quickly shifting away. Very well. I will grant Alara a public opportunity to defend herself. 3 days hence, in the church's hall of judgment, let her prove her herbs are not dark arts before all. If she cannot prove it. He did not finish, but a chill ran through me. I saw him give Valen a subtle look, a silent agreement. Your Majesty. Samuel immediately stepped forward, his voice pleading. The hall of judgment is Valen's ground. He will surely set a trap for Ilara. The box also contains records of Valen replacing the soldiers' herbs that year. This is the best I can offer. The king waved a hand, the crack in the jade ring seemingly deepening. You are dismissed. Bring Ilara to the Hall of Judgment in 3 days. Leaving the palace, the dampness in the wind intensified, stinging my eyes. Samuel squeezed my hand, his voice apologetic. I am sorry I could not persuade the king. He did not even look at the records in the wooden box. It is not your fault. I shook my head, touching the herbal manual in my pocket. The hard object finally slipped out a yellowed scrap of paper, bearing my mother's script. Valen replaced Northland's herbs, substituting withered mint for fresh, causing the condition of 3 soldiers to worsen. Recorded in early spring. So this was the hard thing I had felt. It was folded so small I hadn't noticed it. Valen will surely set a trap in the Hall of Judgment. He won't let me leave alive. As we reached the Duke's keep, Kane rushed in, his armor dusty. A fresh burn mark or raw welt identical in shape to Valen's brand marred his left wrist. My Lord Duke, I found proof. The cursed villagers Valen spoke of are all vagrants he paid. I found their receipts for the silver, bearing their fingerprints. He pulled a stack of papers from his coat. As he handed them to Samuel, I saw his hand tremble. But, when I tried to enter the palace to give them to His Majesty, the Templar guards blocked me. They said no one could enter without Valen's permission. Those soldiers on their wrists, they had the same burn marks as mine. He anticipated this. Samuel's face darkened. He walked to the window, looking at the begonia tree outside. The petals were stained with a sticky black residue, similar to the black liquid Valen had poured. He intends to leave Ilara without recourse in the Hall of Judgment. The vagrant's burn marks, and this residue on the petals, are all his contingency plans. I walked to his side, clutching my mother's herb satchel. It held the forgery, the copper coin, my mother's note, and the mint seeds from Cain. Each was a clue, but I didn't know if they would be useful in the Hall of Judgment. I am not afraid to go, my voice trembled, yet held a thread of resolve. I can use my herbs to prove I am no witch. But I fear Valen will use the brand to force a confession, as he did to my mother. Samuel turned, gently wiping the dampness from the corner of my eye. His fingertip was warm, conveying a reassuring strength, brushing against the edge of the note sticking out of my pocket. Do not fear, he said, his eyes unwavering. The floor of the Hall of Judgment is colder than the pyre, but I will stand beside you, and I will not leave your side. Valen's brand will not touch you. No one shall harm a hair on your head. Your mother's note, and that copper coin, will be our evidence. I leaned into his embrace, hearing the strong beat of his heart, smelling the leather and sunlight on him. My anxiety lessened. But I knew the trial in 3 days would be a difficult battle. Valen's forgery, the bribed vagrants, the marked soldiers, and the secret behind the crack in the king's jade thumb ring. Could we win? And would the old woman from the alley be an old friend of my mother, able to testify for us? The confrontation of runes in the Hall of Judgment. My rune heals, it does not curse Valen. Do you dare let me treat that burn on your hand with my herbal juice? The sun of the early spring noon should have been warm, but the stone walls of the Hall of Judgment filtered it down to cold light. I stood in the center of the hall. The stone floor was chillingly cold, every step felt like treading on ice. The hall was immense. Rusty chains hung from the vaulted ceiling, holding a few precarious candlesticks. The flame flickered violently in the draught, casting my shadow on the wall, shrinking and expanding, as if torn by an invisible hand. Valen sat on the judgment chair on the left side of the high platform, holding the familiar searing brand. The evil symbol on its tip glowed dull red. The heat and stench of burning metal wafted toward me, catching in my throat. The king sat in the main chair, the crack in his jade thumb ring particularly noticeable in the candlelight. He rubbed the crack incessantly, yet avoided my gaze as if deliberately looking away. Cain stood behind Samuel, his bandaged left wrist exposed, the clanging of his armor quieter than usual, clearly vigilant against Valen's movements. "Bring the witnesses forward." Valen's voice was sharp, like metal scraping metal. 2 Templar soldiers escorted 3 vagrants into the hall. They wore tattered gray tunics, and fresh burn marks, identical to the pattern of Valen's brand, were visible on their wrists. One short vagrant dared not look up, his eyes darting, his hand instinctively reaching for his waist where half a mint drop, the kind I gave Martha's son yesterday, was hidden. "Tell us, were you not cursed by this witch with a dark sigil?" Valen struck the brand on the stone table. Sparks flew, making the vagrants tremble. The short vagrant stammered, "Yes, she drew a symbol that made my son fall ill, and she said he wouldn't be cured unless I gave her silver." His voice shook, yet his eyes darted to me, as if apologizing. I tightened my grip on the herb satchel in my sleeve. Inside lay my mother's note, Valen's copper coin, and a small jar of freshly mixed mint salve. "You lie." My voice was soft, yet startlingly clear in the silent hall. "Your son suffered from the cold, not a curse. The mint drop at your waist, I gave it to Martha for your son yesterday, saying it would ease his cough. Have you forgotten?" The short vagrant's face instantly went white. He snatched his hand away from his waist. Valen's face darkened. He raised the brand as if to strike the vagrant. "You dare to lie." Samuel suddenly stepped forward, his scabbard blocking the brand. Does the Inquisitor intend to conceal something by abusing his own witness in the Hall of Judgment? The king cleared his throat, breaking the deadlock. "Ilara, you claim you did not curse anyone. How do you prove your herbs are not dark arts?" I looked up at the king, then at the clay pot at Valen's waist. It surely held the black liquid he used to feed the beasts. "I can use my herbs to heal wounds," I said, taking the mint salve from my satchel. "I can cure that vagrant's son, and Captain Cain's burn mark, with this salve. Dark arts only harm, but my herbs save lives. That is the best proof." Valen suddenly laughed, a grim, twisted sound. "Who knows if you have mixed dark arts into that salve? If you are truly innocent, draw the rune your mother taught you. If you cannot draw it, it is a confession." He thrust the brand toward me, the heat searing my cheek. "Or, draw a curse sigil, and prove you wield dark arts." My heart sank. Valen was being deliberate. He knew I would not draw a curse sigil, and if I drew a healing rune, he would claim it was dark arts. But I could not surrender. My mother's note was in my hand. Valen's wickedness in replacing the herbs must be exposed today. I took the small porcelain bottle from my satchel and poured out a drop of mint juice. Dipping my fingertip in the pale green liquid, I began to draw slowly on the stone table before me. My mother's healing rune was fluid and winding, like running water. As I completed the final stroke, a faint green shimmer emanated from the lines, starkly visible against the cold gray stone. "Dark arts. This is dark arts." Valen roared, raising his brand to smash the rune. Just then, Cain rushed forward, presenting his burned left wrist toward the rune. The faint light fell on the burn. The red, swollen wound faded at a visible rate. Even the scar lightened. "It is not dark arts." Cain's voice was filled with excitement. "My wound is healed. This is healing." The Hall of Judgment erupted in chaos. The king rose from his throne, staring at the rune on the stone table, then at Cain's wrist. The crack in his jade thumb ring seemed more prominent. Valen's face was ashen, but he clung to his composure. "It is a mere trick. That vagrant's son is still feverish. If you can heal him, I will believe you." "I healed him long ago," an aged voice suddenly announced from the hall entrance. I turned to see the old woman in the gray tunic from the alley. She was holding Martha's son. The boy's small face was flushed, but he was smiling, clutching half an edelweiss flower. This boy's fever broke yesterday. Valen hid him away and forced Martha to lie. The old woman walked to the center of the hall, handing the child to Martha. She took a cloth bag from her coat. I am an herbalist from the Northlands. 20 years ago, I treated the wounded alongside Alara's mother. This contains the records of Valen replacing the herbs. He substituted withered mint for fresh, causing the condition of 3 soldiers to worsen until they perished. Samuel immediately took the bag and showed it to the king. Your Majesty, this is identical to the note my mother left. Valen not only coerced false testimony but also killed soldiers 20 years ago. He is the true villain. Valen completely lost control. He lunged, seizing Martha's son, placing a dagger to the child's throat. Do not come closer. If you press me further, I will kill him. Your Majesty, if you let me go, I will drop the charges against Samuel for sheltering the witch, and I will help you stabilize the church. The king hesitated. He looked at the child, then at Valen, turning the jade thumb ring frantically. I clenched the herbal juice in my hand. The faint shimmer had not yet dissipated. If I drew a protective rune, I could save the child, but Valen would accuse me of dark arts. Samuel discreetly reached for the sword at his waist, his eyes vigilant, but afraid to move. The child was still in Valen's grasp. I took a step forward, looking at Valen's hand. A faint old scar was visible on his thumb web, a burn mark similar to the one he had inflicted on Samuel. Valen, do you dare let me treat that burn on your hand with my herbal juice? My voice was firm. The pale green shimmer on my fingertip reflected on the stone table. That wound was burned 20 years ago, and it has never healed. You cannot sleep when it rains, am I right? My mother once said you replaced the herbs because you could not heal your own wound, and you envied her herbal art. Valen's body froze. The dagger nearly slipped from his hand. His secret had been exposed. The hall of judgment was terrifyingly silent, broken only by the sizzle of the candles and the child's cries. I looked at Valen, then at Samuel. One thought filled my mind: today, I must not only prove I am no witch but also clear my mother's name and make Valen pay for his crimes. But Valen would not yield easily. The dagger remained at the child's throat, his eyes wide with madness. The king still hesitated, unsure whether to side with Valen or with us. The old woman subtly walked beside me, handing me an edelweiss flower. This was your mother's favorite flower. She said edelweiss brings courage. It is time to use it now. I took the edelweiss. Dewdrops on the petals mixed with the herbal juice on my fingertips, and the light grew brighter. I slowly raised my hand, preparing to draw the protective rune. Even if Valen accused me of dark arts, I had to save the child. Samuel seemed to read my intention. He stepped forward, shielding me with his body. He whispered, "Do not panic. I will take care of this." Would you like me to analyze the true identity of the old woman, and what Valen's next move will be under the current high-stakes situation?